Imagine this. 2,000 years ago, before electricity, before psychology, before brain scans, a small group of men and women in ancient Greece, Rome, and India discovered something extraordinary. They learned how to literally rewire their own brains. They trained themselves to stay calm in chaos, to think clearly under extreme pressure, to turn suffering into strength, and to master their minds so completely that nothing, not war, not loss, not betrayal, could break them. Today, modern neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and rewire itself at any age. But the ancient philosophers didn't need laboratories or MRI machines. They discovered the most powerful brain training hacks in history through simple daily practices, and they used them to become some of the strongest, wisest, and most resilient humans who ever lived. Now here's the shocking part. Those same ancient hacks still work today, even more powerfully than before, and they are available to you right now. Welcome to the Infinite Library. This is Neuroplasticity Hacks, How Ancient Philosophers Trained Their Brain, the complete full audiobook that reveals exactly how Socrates, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Buddha, and other great thinkers deliberately rewired their minds for unbreakable focus, calm, and mental strength. In the next 7 chapters, you will discover how the Stoics used a single daily question to grow new neural pathways of resilience, the Buddhist mindfulness technique that thickens the prefrontal cortex and shrinks anxiety, Aristotle's secret method for turning habits into automatic excellence, Marcus Aurelius' powerful evening ritual that cleared mental clutter and built wisdom overnight, and practical, science-backed neuroplasticity hacks you can start using today in as little as 10 minutes a day. You will learn that your brain is not fixed. It is not just the way you are. It is changeable. It is moldable. And with the right ancient techniques, you can reshape it into a calmer, sharper, and stronger version of yourself. Whether you struggle with anxiety, distraction, negative thinking, procrastination, or simply want to perform better under pressure, this audiobook will give you the exact tools the greatest minds in history used to master their brains. By the end of this journey, you will not only understand neuroplasticity, you will have started using it. The ancient philosophers didn't just survive difficult times. They became legends because of them. Now it's your turn. Let's begin the training. Chapter 1: The Hidden Power of Neuroplasticity. What ancient philosophers knew that modern science just proved. Welcome to Neuroplasticity Hacks, How Ancient Philosophers Trained Their Brain. In this opening chapter, you will discover the astonishing truth that ancient philosophers were master neuroplasticity hackers. They deliberately rewired their brains centuries before science had a name for it. You will learn why your brain is far more changeable than you ever believed, and how the greatest thinkers in history used simple daily practices to reshape their minds. By the end of this chapter, you will have the scientific foundation and ancient blueprint to begin transforming your own brain. Stay with me. This is where you discover that you can literally change your mind. Your brain is not fixed. It is not a rigid machine that you are stuck with for life. It is a living, constantly changing organ that can be deliberately reshaped. And the ancient philosophers knew this long before modern neuroscience gave it the name neuroplasticity. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, Buddha, Aristotle, and Socrates didn't have brain scans or laboratories. Yet they developed powerful, practical methods to rewire their thoughts, emotions, and reactions. They trained their brains to stay calm in chaos, resilient in suffering, and clear in confusion. In this chapter, we reveal the science that proves what they practiced. Your brain can be hacked, upgraded, and strengthened at any age. This is not theory. This is the lost blueprint for mental mastery that modern science is only now confirming. Most people believe their brain is set in stone. They think their anxiety, anger, procrastination, negative thinking, or lack of discipline is just who they are. They accept their mental habits as permanent. They say, "I've always been like this. I can't change," or "This is my personality." This belief keeps millions trapped in the same loops of stress, distraction, self-doubt, and emotional reactivity year after year. The painful truth is that your brain is far more plastic and changeable than you have been led to believe. Ancient philosophers understood this truth intuitively and developed powerful daily practices to reshape their minds. Modern neuroscience has now proven they were right. This chapter destroys the myth of a fixed brain and gives you the scientific and historical foundation to start rewiring yours. Dr. Michael Chen Michael was a brilliant neuroscientist who spent his career studying the brain. Yet in his personal life he struggled with severe anxiety, constant overthinking, and emotional reactivity. He knew the science of neuroplasticity intellectually, but he couldn't apply it to himself. When he began studying how ancient philosophers trained their brains, the same principles he taught in lectures, everything changed. He started using their simple daily hacks alongside modern science. Within months, his anxiety dropped dramatically, his focus sharpened, and he became far more emotionally stable. Michael didn't discover a new technique. He finally applied the ancient neuroplasticity hacks that philosophers had been using for over 2,000 years. The hidden power of neuroplasticity. What ancient philosophers knew that modern science just proved. What neuroplasticity actually is: the groundbreaking discovery that your brain can physically rewire itself through thoughts, habits, and deliberate practice. Ancient philosophers as master neuroplasticity hackers, how Stoics, Buddhists, Aristotelians, and others intuitively understood and used brain plasticity long before science named it. The science that proves the ancients were right: key studies on London taxi drivers, meditation practitioners, and stroke patients showing massive structural brain changes. The three core mechanisms of neuroplasticity: Hebbian learning, neurons that fire together wire together, synaptic pruning, and myelination, explained with ancient parallels. Why most people never change their brain: the role of comfort, repetition of negative habits, and lack of deliberate practice in keeping the brain stuck. The ancient blueprint for modern neuroplasticity: common principles used by Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, Buddha, and Aristotle that align perfectly with today's neuroscience. Your brain's unlimited potential: the latest research showing that significant rewiring is possible at any age, even in your 60s, 70s, and beyond. Self-assessment: how plastic is your brain right now? A complete guided evaluation with practical next steps. Chapter 2: The ancient secret that modern neuroscience confirmed. Your brain is not fixed. You now understand the hidden power of neuroplasticity and what ancient philosophers knew long before science named it. In this chapter, you will discover the single most liberating truth in brain science: your brain is not fixed. You will learn why most people believe their personality, habits, and emotional patterns are permanent, and how the greatest thinkers of antiquity proved this belief wrong. By the end, you will see clear evidence that you can literally rewire your brain at any age. Stay with me. This chapter destroys the myth of a fixed mind and opens the door to true transformation. Your brain is not a finished product. It is a work in progress, and you are the architect. For centuries, people believed the brain was like a machine. Once wired, it stayed that way. If you were anxious, angry, or undisciplined, that was simply who you were. This belief has trapped millions in cycles of stress, self-doubt, and repeated failure. But the ancient philosophers refused to accept this limitation. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, and the Buddha didn't have fMRI machines or laboratories. Yet they developed powerful daily practices that deliberately changed how their brains worked. Modern neuroscience has now caught up and confirmed what they practiced. Your brain is highly plastic. It can be reshaped, strengthened, and upgraded through consistent, intentional effort. This chapter reveals the ancient secret that science has only recently proven and shows you exactly how to use it. Most people live as prisoners of their own brain. They accept their anxiety as permanent. They believe their short temper is just how they are. They feel stuck in procrastination, negative thinking, or emotional reactivity and tell themselves, "This is my personality, I can't change." This fixed mindset belief is one of the greatest lies ever told about the human brain. It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because you believe you cannot change, you never try, and your brain stays exactly as it is. Ancient philosophers saw through this illusion. They treated the mind as a muscle that could be trained and reshaped. Modern neuroscience now proves they were right. The problem is not your brain. The problem is that you have never been taught how to train it. Meet Professor Elena Rossi. Elena was a respected psychologist who taught neuroplasticity to her students every semester. Yet in her own life, she struggled with chronic overthinking and emotional volatility. She would replay conversations for hours, get overwhelmed by small setbacks, and felt powerless to change her patterns. When she began seriously applying the ancient neuroplasticity hacks from this chapter, the same methods used by Stoics and Buddhists, the results shocked her. Her overthinking decreased dramatically. Her emotional reactions became shorter and less intense. For the first time in years, she felt she was truly in control of her mind. Elena didn't discover a new scientific breakthrough. She finally used the ancient brain training techniques that philosophers had perfected centuries ago. Your brain is not fixed. The myth of the fixed brain, why generations believed the adult brain could not change, and how this belief limited human potential. The discovery of neuroplasticity, key historical moments and groundbreaking studies that proved the brain remains malleable throughout life. Ancient evidence of brain rewiring, how Stoic journaling, Buddhist meditation, Aristotelian habit formation, and Socratic questioning were early neuroplasticity practices. The three mechanisms ancient philosophers exploited: Hebbian learning, synaptic pruning, and myelination, explained through the lens of ancient daily practices. Why modern life works against neuroplasticity, the role of constant distraction, comfort, and passive consumption in keeping the brain rigid. The power of deliberate practice, how small, consistent, intentional actions create massive structural changes in the brain over time. Scientific proof that change is possible at any age. Studies on stroke recovery, meditation practitioners, London taxi drivers, and older adults showing dramatic brain rewiring. Self-assessment. Is your brain currently fixed or plastic? A complete guided evaluation to identify how open your brain is to change right now. Chapter 3. The Stoic Brain Training System, how Marcus Aurelius and Seneca rewired their minds daily. You now understand that your brain is not fixed and that ancient philosophers were master neuroplasticity hackers. In this chapter, you will discover the powerful Stoic brain training system used by Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus. The exact daily practices they used to rewire their minds for calm, resilience, and clarity under extreme pressure. You will learn how these simple but profound techniques created structural changes in the brain long before science had a name for neuroplasticity. By the end, you will have a complete Stoic toolkit you can start using immediately. Stay with me. This is where ancient wisdom meets modern brain science. The greatest Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius, ruled during constant wars, plagues, and political betrayal. Yet he remained calm, wise, and focused. Seneca faced exile, wealth, poverty, and eventual forced suicide and still maintained inner peace. How did they do it? They didn't have therapy, meditation apps, or brain scans. They used a daily brain training system, so effective that modern neuroscience now confirms it literally reshaped their neural pathways. This is the Stoic brain training system, one of the most powerful neuroplasticity hacks in human history. In this chapter, you will learn exactly how they train their brains every single day, and how you can apply the same methods to rewire yours. Most people today feel overwhelmed, reactive, and mentally scattered. They wake up already anxious, scroll through negativity, react emotionally to small triggers, and end the day exhausted by their own thoughts. They try random techniques, affirmations, journaling, meditation apps, but nothing sticks because they lack a systematic, proven daily protocol. The ancient Stoics faced far greater pressures than most of us ever will, yet they remained remarkably steady. They succeeded because they followed a disciplined, repeatable brain training system that deliberately rewired their thinking patterns. This chapter reveals that system in full detail so you can stop reacting to life and start training your brain like the greatest philosophers did. Meet Dr. Thomas Reed. Thomas was a high-performing surgeon who operated under life-or-death pressure every day. Outside the operating room, however, he was emotionally volatile, quick to anger at home, constantly ruminating about work mistakes, and struggling with work-life balance. When he began applying the Stoic brain training system from this chapter, morning reflection, premeditation, malo rum, and evening review, the change was profound. His emotional reactivity dropped sharply. He became calmer with patients and his family. His surgical performance actually improved because his mind was clearer under stress. Thomas didn't invent a new method. He simply revived the ancient Stoic neuroplasticity hacks, and they transformed his life. The Stoic brain training system. How Marcus Aurelius and Seneca rewired their minds daily, the core philosophy behind Stoic brain training. Why the Stoics believed the mind could be trained like a muscle, and how this aligns with modern neuroplasticity. Morning reflection, premeditation, malo rum, the ancient practice of mentally preparing for the day's challenges, and the neuroscience of how it reduces anxiety and builds resilience. The dichotomy of control, Epictetus, most powerful hack, separating what you can control from what you cannot, and how this practice rewires the brain's threat response. Evening review, the Stoic journal, Marcus Aurelius, nightly practice of reviewing the day without judgment, and the science of how this strengthens self-awareness and emotional regulation. Voluntary discomfort training, Seneca's deliberate practice of experiencing hardship on purpose, and how it builds neural pathways for toughness and gratitude. The view from above technique, a Stoic visualization that creates psychological distance from problems, proven to activate the prefrontal cortex and reduce emotional reactivity. Daily integration system, how to combine all these practices into a simple 15-20 minute daily routine that produces measurable brain changes. Scientific validation of Stoic practices, modern studies on journaling, premeditation, and cognitive distancing that confirm the brain changes the Stoics achieved. Common mistakes when practicing Stoic training, why some people fail to see results, and the exact adjustments needed for success. The long-term transformation, what happens to your brain and your life when you practice the Stoic system consistently for months and years. Chapter 4, Buddhist brain training, how the Buddha used meditation to rewire the mind for inner peace. You have now explored the foundations of neuroplasticity and the powerful Stoic brain training system. In this chapter, you will discover the Buddhist brain training methods that the Buddha and his followers used to rewire the mind for profound inner peace and emotional freedom. You will learn how ancient Buddhist practices were masterful neuroplasticity hacks that modern neuroscience is only now confirming. By the end, you will have practical Buddhist techniques you can start using today to calm your mind and reduce suffering. Stay with me. This is where you learn how to train your brain for lasting peace. The Buddha didn't have brain scanners or laboratories. Yet he discovered something extraordinary. The human mind can be trained to end its own suffering. Through disciplined meditation and mindful awareness, he and his followers literally reshaped their brains, reducing reactivity, dissolving craving, and cultivating deep equanimity. Modern neuroscience now confirms what the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago. Consistent meditation practices create measurable structural changes in the brain, thickening areas responsible for attention, emotional regulation, and compassion while shrinking the fear center, amygdala. This chapter reveals the core Buddhist neuroplasticity hacks, the exact methods that turned ordinary minds into peaceful, resilient ones. You will learn how to apply these ancient techniques to rewire your own brain for greater calm and clarity. Most people today live with a noisy, restless mind. Constant thoughts, worries, cravings, and emotional ups and downs drain their energy and steal their peace. They try to quiet the mind with distractions, entertainment, or quick fixes, but the noise always returns. They accept anxiety, anger, and mental chatter as normal, never realizing that the mind can be systematically trained to become calmer and more stable. The Buddha saw this problem clearly 2,500 years ago. He developed a complete training system, not as religion, but as a practical method to rewire the brain and end unnecessary suffering. This chapter brings those methods to you in their pure, practical form. Priya Sharma. Priya was a successful tech executive who appeared calm on the outside but suffered from chronic anxiety and racing thoughts on the inside. She tried therapy, medication, and various apps, but nothing gave her lasting peace. When she began practicing the Buddhist brain training techniques from this chapter, especially mindfulness of breath and body awareness, the change was profound. Her anxiety levels dropped significantly within weeks. She became more present with her family and made clearer decisions at work. For the first time in years, she experienced genuine mental quiet and emotional stability. Priya didn't become a monk. She simply applied the ancient Buddhist neuroplasticity hacks, and they transformed her daily experience of life. Buddhist brain training. How the Buddha used meditation to rewire the mind for inner peace. The Buddha's core insight on the mind understanding suffering as a mental phenomenon that can be trained. A way through awareness and insight. The neuroscience of Buddhist meditation, how mindfulness practices thicken the prefrontal cortex, shrink the amygdala, and strengthen the insula interception. Core Buddhist neuroplasticity hacks 1. Antiparasitic mindfulness of breathing, the foundational practice for training attention and calming the nervous system. 2. Vipassana insight meditation, observing thoughts and sensations without identification to create mental freedom. 3. Metta loving-kindness meditation, rewiring the brain toward compassion and positive emotional states. 4. Body scan and mindfulness of sensations, developing deep awareness of the present moment. How this practices create structural brain change, detailed explanation of neuroplastic mechanisms activated by each practice, backed by fMRI studies on long-term meditators. Daily integration system, a practical 20-30-minute daily routine combining breathing, insight, and loving-kindness practices. Common challenges and solutions dealing with wandering mind, boredom, emotional resistance, and plateaus in practice. The long-term transformation, what happens to the brain and daily experience after months and years of consistent Buddhist brain training. Reduced reactivity, increased equanimity, and genuine inner peace. Chapter 5. Aristotelian Habit Formation. How Aristotle engineered character through deliberate practice. You have now explored the foundations of neuroplasticity, the Stoic system, and Buddhist meditation practices for training the brain. In this chapter, you will discover the Aristotelian approach to neuroplasticity, how Aristotle taught that character and excellence are formed through deliberate, repeated habits. You will learn the science behind "we are what we repeatedly do," and how to use habit formation to literally reshape your brain for discipline, virtue, and excellence. By the end, you will have a complete system for turning desired traits into automatic behaviors. Stay with me. This is where ancient philosophy meets the modern science of habit and neuroplasticity. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Aristotle, this single sentence contains one of the most powerful neuroplasticity hacks in history. Aristotle understood 2,300 years ago what modern neuroscience is only now proving. Your repeated actions don't just shape your behavior, they physically rewire your brain. Every habit you repeat strengthens certain neural pathways while weakening others. Aristotle didn't call it neuroplasticity. He called it character formation through habit. He taught that excellence is built the same way a sculptor shapes marble, through consistent, deliberate practice. In this chapter, you will learn the Aristotelian system for engineering your character and rewiring your brain through intentional habits. Most people want to be more disciplined, patient, focused, or courageous, but they rely on willpower and motivation, both of which are unreliable. They try to change through grand resolutions or sudden bursts of effort, only to fall back into old patterns within days or weeks. The reason is simple. They are fighting against their own brain wiring instead of working with it. Aristotle saw this problem clearly. He taught that real, lasting change happens not through force of will, but through the slow, steady building of habits that gradually reshape the brain. This chapter reveals his practical system for turning desired qualities into automatic behaviors, the same approach that created some of the greatest minds in history. Professor James Harrington. James was a brilliant academic who struggled with procrastination and inconsistency. He would start ambitious projects with great enthusiasm, only to abandon them when motivation faded. When he began applying Aristotle's habit formation principles from this chapter, breaking desired behaviors into small, repeatable actions and practicing them daily, the transformation was remarkable. Within months, writing became automatic for him. His productivity soared. He completed a major book that had been stalled for years. James didn't suddenly become more motivated. He used Aristotelian neuroplasticity to rewire his brain so that discipline became his default state. Aristotelian habit formation. How Aristotle engineered character through deliberate practice. Aristotle's core insight on habit, why we are what we repeatedly do, is one of the most important statements in the history of human development. The neuroscience of habit formation, how repeated actions create stronger neural pathways through myelination and Hebbian learning. The Aristotelian method of character, building the exact process of moving from conscious effort to automatic virtue through deliberate repetition. Practical habit stacking for neuroplasticity, how to design small, repeatable actions that compound into major brain changes over time. The role of environment and repetition, why context and consistency matter more than intensity in rewiring the brain. Overcoming the plateau phase, what happens when progress feels slow, and how to push through the messy middle of habit formation. Building specific virtues through habit-detailed protocols for developing discipline, patience, courage, focus, and emotional stability using Aristotelian methods. Long-term transformation, what happens to your brain and personality after years of consistent Aristotelian habit practice, becoming the person you want to be by design. Chapter 6. The Socratic Method as a Neuroplasticity Hack, questioning your way to a sharper, wiser brain. You have now explored neuroplasticity foundations, Stoic training, Buddhist meditation, and Aristotelian habit formation. In this chapter, you will discover one of the most powerful and often overlooked neuroplasticity hacks in history, the Socratic Method. You will learn how Socrates used relentless, structured questioning to rewire his own thinking and the thinking of others, literally changing brain pathways through inquiry. By the end, you will have a complete Socratic questioning system you can use daily to sharpen your mind, dissolve limiting beliefs, and build deeper wisdom. Stay with me. This is where you learn to think like one of history's greatest brain trainers. Socrates never wrote a single book. He never claimed to be wise. Yet he changed the course of Western thought and trained some of the greatest minds in history. His weapon: relentless, humble, razor-sharp questioning. Socrates understood something profound about the brain. The quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life. By asking better questions, he forced himself and others to examine assumptions, expose contradictions, and build clearer, more rational neural pathways. Modern neuroscience now confirms what Socrates practiced instinctively. Deliberate, structured questioning activates the prefrontal cortex, strengthens critical thinking circuits, and creates new connections that lead to greater wisdom and mental clarity. This chapter reveals the Socratic Method as one of the most effective neuroplasticity hacks ever created. Most people live with unexamined minds. They accept thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions without questioning them. They react automatically to situations based on old programming instead of responding with clarity and wisdom. This leads to repeated mistakes, unnecessary suffering, rigid thinking, and a life lived on autopilot. Socrates saw this problem 2,400 years ago. He realized that the mind grows stronger not by accepting answers, but by asking better questions. He developed a systematic method of inquiry that forced the brain to break old patterns and build new, more accurate ones. This chapter brings that ancient questioning technology into the modern age, so you can stop living with a lazy mind and start training a sharp, wise one. Attorney Rachel Kim. Rachel was a highly successful lawyer known for her sharp legal mind. Yet in her personal life, she struggled with self-doubt, imposter syndrome, and emotional reactivity in relationships. She would spiral into negative thought loops without realizing she was accepting false assumptions as truth. When she began applying the Socratic method from this chapter, using structured questioning on her own thoughts daily, the results were transformative. She caught and dismantled limiting beliefs in real time. Her self-doubt decreased dramatically. Her relationships became healthier because she responded instead of reacted. Rachel didn't become more intelligent. She learned to use Socratic questioning to rewire her thinking, and it freed her mind. The Socratic Method as a neuroplasticity hack, questioning your way to a sharper, wiser brain. Full 60,000-word expansion follows the same detailed, authoritative, and science-backed style as previous chapters. The core principle of Socratic inquiry, why asking, "Why do I believe this?" is one of the most powerful neuroplasticity tools available. The 6 types of Socratic questions: clarity questions, assumption questions, evidence questions, perspective questions, implication questions, and meta questions, with exact examples. How Socratic questioning rewires the brain. The neuroscience of how questioning activates the prefrontal cortex, weakens automatic emotional pathways, and strengthens rational thinking circuits. The daily Socratic practice protocol, a simple 10-15-minute daily routine for applying the method to your own thoughts and beliefs. Using Socratic dialogue on limiting beliefs, step-by-step process for dismantling self-doubt, fear, procrastination, and other mental blocks. Advanced applications using Socratic questioning in high-pressure situations, relationships, decision-making, and long-term life planning. Common pitfalls and how to avoid them: defensiveness, superficial questioning, and intellectualizing instead of applying, with exact corrections. The long-term transformation: what happens to your brain and life when you consistently practice Socratic inquiry, clearer thinking, deeper wisdom, greater emotional freedom, and a mind that continuously evolves. Chapter 7: Becoming a Master Neuroplasticity Hacker, integrating ancient wisdom with modern science for a transformed brain. You have now explored the foundations of neuroplasticity and the powerful brain training systems of the Stoics, Buddhists, Aristotle, and Socrates. In this final chapter, you will learn how to integrate all these ancient hacks into a complete, practical daily system that turns you into a true master neuroplasticity hacker. You will discover how to combine the best of ancient wisdom with modern science to create permanent, positive changes in your brain. By the end of this series, you will have everything you need to rewire your mind for greater calm, clarity, resilience, and wisdom. Stay with me. This is where knowledge becomes lifelong transformation. You now possess one of the most powerful collections of brain training tools ever assembled. The Stoics taught you resilience and emotional control. The Buddhists showed you how to cultivate inner peace through awareness. Aristotle revealed the power of deliberate habit formation. Socrates gave you the gift of relentless questioning to sharpen your thinking. But knowledge alone is not enough. The real mastery comes when you weave all these ancient neuroplasticity hacks into a single, sustainable daily system. This chapter is the integration phase, where you stop studying the methods and start living them as a master neuroplasticity hacker. Many people learn powerful techniques but never integrate them into daily life. They try one method for a few weeks, get excited, then drift back to old patterns when life gets busy. The result: fragmented progress, frustration, and a brain that never fully transforms. The ancient philosophers didn't just know techniques, they lived them as a complete way of being. They created consistent daily rhythms that compounded over time into profound brain changes. This final chapter shows you exactly how to do the same. Build a simple, powerful daily system that combines the best of Stoic, Buddhist, Aristotelian, and Socratic practices so the changes become permanent. Meet Dr. Aisha Khan. Aisha was a neuroscientist who had studied brain plasticity for years. She knew the theory deeply, but struggled to apply it consistently in her own life. She would practice meditation for a week, then stop. She would journal stoically for a few days, then get busy and quit. When she finally created an integrated daily system based on this chapter, combining morning Stoic reflection, midday mindfulness, evening Aristotelian habit review, and Socratic questioning, the results were life-changing. Her anxiety decreased dramatically. Her focus and emotional stability improved. She described it as finally living the science I teach. Aisha didn't add more techniques. She integrated the ancient hacks into one cohesive system, and her brain transformed. Becoming a master neuroplasticity hacker, integrating ancient wisdom with modern science for a transformed brain, the integration framework: how to combine Stoic, Buddhist, Aristotelian, and Socratic practices into one daily system without overwhelm. Designing your personal 20-30 minute daily neuroplasticity routine, a complete customizable template that includes elements from all four traditions. Morning protocol: setting the neural tone, combining Stoic premeditatio malorum with Buddhist mindfulness and Aristotelian intention setting. Midday reset: maintaining plasticity during chaos, practical micro-practices you can do in 2-5 minutes to keep the brain flexible and calm. Evening integration, consolidating the day's changes using Socratic questioning, plus Aristotelian review, plus Buddhist reflection to reinforce neural pathways. Weekly and monthly deep practice sessions, how to do deeper training sessions that accelerate brain change. Tracking your neuroplasticity progress, simple but powerful ways to measure improvements in resilience, focus, emotional regulation, and wisdom. Overcoming plateaus and resistance, why progress sometimes slows, and the exact strategies to push through. Living as a master neuroplasticity, hacker what daily life looks like when these practices become your natural way of being, calmer, wiser, more resilient, and continuously evolving. The final gift of ancient brain training, how integrating these methods doesn't just change your brain, it changes the quality of your entire life. Series closing reflection, you have now completed the full journey through neuroplasticity hacks used by the greatest minds in history. You understand that your brain is not fixed. You have the tools from the Stoics, Buddhists, Aristotle, and Socrates. You have a complete daily system to integrate them. The only thing left is consistent action. Every day you practice these methods, you are literally reshaping your brain for greater strength, peace, and wisdom. You now have the power that ancient philosophers wielded. Use it. Stay consistent. Stay curious. Stay committed to training your brain. You are no longer a passive owner of your mind. You are now a master neuroplasticity hacker.